Steel Curtain Network.
Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman of Steel Curtain Network, which is part of Fans First Sports Network, and we're here for another Steelers preview podcast. Welcome back. Happy Thursday. The final Steelers preview before the NFL draft next Thursday. Programming note, next Thursday's Steelers preview will be the three of us talking about the Steelers pick. Maybe at 17, maybe at top 10, maybe later. We'll find out. Anyways, Dave Schofield and Bryan Davis join me. Dave, what's up?
Not much. We may be talking at 17. We may be talking earlier. We may be talking later as this picks, but we'll probably most definitely be talking closer to midnight than what we are right now.
Yeah, for sure. Although 17 is earlier than 20 last year, so take that for what it's worth. Bryan?
Yeah, about 15 minutes.
To quote the great Gorilla Monsoon from the WWF days, batten down the hatches. It's about to get crazy. So all I've got to do, I haven't done this in a long time. I'm going to do it in an instrumental song and break out in the song. Ba-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. It's the final countdown.
This is why he ignored the headline, the title.
It's not that.
Just because of the song. That is.
I'm changing the headline, Jeff.
I didn't give the title. That was I approved that title from Jeff.
I'm changing. I didn't see it, but when it's there and it's on your mind,
just admit it.
Hey, if that was the headline, I would have still broken out in the song because my peeps need it.
Someone does. I don't know who that is, but yeah, someone does. And we're here to talk about the Steelers. I want to ask you all a question about the fan base. It's a large fan base, and it's a very opinionated fan base, just like every fan base is, regardless of sport, league, whatever. When it comes to draft nicks, and I am not one. You all know this. I am not a draft nick. If I had it up to me, I would just say, tell me who they pick, and then let's start breaking down the players. But there's a lot of people that they love to try and predict. Do you think deep down these people that are so into this, and we have some of them on our staff, that they're so into it that they want to just prove that they're right more than they want the team to get that player? Dave, what do you think?
Absolutely. I'm sorry. I still pick on him about it. You know, we all know the crying fit that was Andrew Wilbar when the pick was not Malik Willis. Boy, the Steelers, just think how well that would have worked out for them in 2022 if that was the pick. But I remember because I was editing one of his mocks, and he had a duplicate name in there. And I'm like, you're missing Kenny Pickett anywhere. Oh, yeah, sorry. He's supposed to be at 53. And I'm like, 53? He had the Steelers trading up one spot to get Malik Willis. I'm like, why would they trade up for Malik Willis one spot when all the quarterbacks are sitting there? And if they don't have Willis, they would have their choice of, they would get either Willis or Pickett. Oh, well, the Steelers aren't interested in Kenny Pickett. They haven't done the meetings. That's why we talked about it being an inside job. But this is why people that are so into the draft and try to overanalyze every little thing get it wrong so much. Because guess what? The Steelers don't always like to tip their hand like they did with Najee Harris. They don't really like to do that. So, because it really doesn't make sense. So sometimes when you try to read into it so much, it's like, oh, you know what? The Steelers are trading up for Jalen Carter, because if you add up the letters of Jalen Carter and Chicago Bears and number 9, it will equal 90. And TJ Watt is number 90 and the most recent defensive player of the year for the Steelers. So that's got to be what's going on. Sometimes it feels like we dive into it so much that we get on the edge of ridiculousness when it gets to trying to figure out what the Steelers are doing.
What do you think, Bryan?
Well, Jalen Carter's never had Chicago-style pizza, so they can't pick him there. It's great. I love it. Now, I'm not a draft Nick, but I'm a draft addict. I love watching it. I love the pageantry. I love everything about it. I don't post mock drafts anymore. I do a lot of mock drafts though. The simulators, and I look, and it's just to educate me on where things might go. So I pay attention to a lot of mocks, but we have a lot of fans out there, and not just Steeler fans, NFL fans in general. And one thing that I'm finding out about being more involved in Fans First Sports Network, that Steeler fans aren't as nuts as I thought they were just 2 months ago, because everybody's nuts. Everybody's crazy and everybody's opinionated, and we're basically all the same, just different colors here. But so with that being said, I look at it to find out who the Steelers should be looking at. And so I'm not surprised, and I have to look up a guy. I don't want to look up a guy in the second round. That's why I'm doing that. I want to know exactly the 20 guys that have been mocked to the Steelers, and that's it.
When was the last draft anyone has remembered that went exactly the way everyone thought?
You mean like through all the picks, or even just like
one.
the first 2
even
days?
just round one?
The Najee Harris one.
No, for the Steelers. I'm talking
for the
about in general.
Oh, okay, you're talking about.
Yes.
Getting 5 or 6 picks right is really good for the first round.
I mean, when you think about obviously there was like the Andrew Luck and RG3 where those picks were made seemingly weeks before the NFL draft round one even started, but there's always, and it seems like it's not worse, but there's more activity in the draft now than I remember in previous years in terms of draft day trades, different things like that, teams moving up, teams moving back. There's a lot of that stuff that goes on. And so I don't even try. I really don't try to predict. I'll give you an example. Scobro show. I'm listening to the Scobro show the next day.
That was fun.
And he's doing the mock draft thing. And all of a sudden he goes, holy cow, Anthony Richardson's first overall. If that were to happen, everything else is gone. Like whatever anyone else planned is completely gone. Not that had any, that's just one of those mock draft things. Yeah, that was Steel Dog 88 just said. If Anthony Richardson goes as the number one, the draft will be broken. It is 100% factual. And so I don't try to predict anything. I learn these names so that when they're picked, I can say, hey, this guy went to Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, whatever the case is. I'm just not that guy. I've never been that guy. And like I said, if I didn't cover this team and this league in any way, shape, or form, I would be like, hey, let me know who they pick. And then let's talk about who the Steelers actually have on their team and not just nothing but projections and things like that. So in Reginald, he said, you guys must not watch a lot of college football. I don't.
Nope.
I don't. I'm not a college guy. I know Brian, you said you used to be really into college football.
Huge.
Right?
Yeah.
Not anymore.
I knew everything.
But not anymore.
No.
Yeah.
It's, what, when I got married and had kids, I traded Saturdays for Sundays. And I made a deal. I'm going to be more available for the family on Saturdays because I want my Sundays. My wife said, hey, this is your day. Sunday's your day. We'll work around the Steelers with everything we do. But she didn't ask for Saturdays. I just said, you've got me on Saturdays. I gave up college football without even being asked.
And Dave, you're not a college guy either.
No, because I was always busy outside working or doing various other things on Saturdays. It's not that I don't pay attention to the scores. It's not that I don't look at how specific teams are doing, like a team that you expect to do really well that's losing a bunch of games or vice versa. I'm usually, if there's a game that I see a score, I'll just be pulling for the team that has the either the lower or no ranking. I always look for the upset. But I don't even know what players are playing on teams that could possibly be good players in the pros. That process doesn't start for me, honestly, until the NFL season is over, and then we really get into it.
Plus, we've got Wilbar.
Yeah, he does it for
Let someone else do all the work. Tell us what to do.
Well,
he does the work for me.
And Betts picked up his game a lot too this year.
Yeah,
he's done a great job as well.
Kevin Smith.
The funny thing is, though, is now you throw in the portal too. You throw in these players having the ability to transfer in the drop of a hat. And it's almost like free agency every year. And you never really know Jordan Addison is a great example. Plays with Kenny Pickett his last year. They light it up. Tremendous season. And he says, nah, USC is going to pay me more money, NIL money. I'm going to go there for his final year in college. I don't know. It's just kind of, it's watered down to me. There's too many teams that have no chance of competing for a title. I grew up in West Virginia, so I've always kind of had a soft spot for the Mountaineers. They've got no shot. They have no shot at the Big 12 title, nor do they have a shot in the national championship. That's just fact. It comes down to like 5 or 6 teams every single year. So there you go. I learned when mock draft season officially starts, which, like Dave said, is when the Steelers season ends.
Yes.
That's how I learned. So there you go. All right. Brian is spinning right now. So we'll,
come on, Rainbow Wheel.
There you go.
Come on. Oh, there he goes. Yeah, it's because Jeff, really, if you look at it, I never really got into the draft nearly as much before my time with Behind the Steel Curtain and now with the podcast with Steel Curtain Network, because I mean, honestly, the first draft I ever watched was the Ben Roethlisberger draft. It was raining.
Yeah.
And I was a high school track coach, and we just so happened to have a Friday track meet and not a Saturday track meet that weekend of that year. And I got to watch that draft. But now it's going back to like 2020 when the Steelers didn't pick until, what was it, 48? Is that the number that they had? Right around there, because it's when they drafted Chase Claypool, that I even had to try to know that many names to go that far. Now, with the Steelers having 4 picks in the first 3 rounds, there's a lot of names that I'm at least familiar with, which is nice. And I haven't run nearly as many mock draft simulators as I have sometimes in the past. But it's just kind of being ready to see who could be a member of the Steelers. But as I always say, I don't fall in love with anyone until their name is called. So that way I don't have some big-time draft crush. I mean, there are players I like over top of others, but I don't want some big time draft crush ending up wearing purple.
So next week, we'll be talking about the first Steelers selection, unless they trade completely out of the first round. We'll be talking about at least one player. When they pick, that's up for debate. We'll talk about that. Now, Dave, I want to ask you though about the approach. Mm-hmm. I've talked about this a lot. You brought up 2004 and it's jogged my memory. Steelers got freaking lucky. I'm sorry. There's no other way around it. They were the 11th pick, and they sat on their hands, not like what they did in 2003 with Troy, where they actually jumped up and said, we want this guy. It wasn't that. They got lucky that the Cleveland Browns took the soldier, Kellen Winslow Jr., at 10, and then the Steelers get Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger, the 11th overall pick. I would even say they got lucky last year. Mm-hmm. Who would have thought at pick number 20, they would have had any of the quarterbacks they want available to them? I didn't. There were a lot of quarterback quarterback needy teams ahead of them. The Carolina Panthers, the Atlanta Falcons, the New Orleans Saints were the 3 big ones that everyone's like, I don't know who they're going to take. And they didn't take any of them. Would you rather the Steelers sit back and hopefully get lucky, or would you rather them be aggressive? And a lot of teams are trending in that aggressive way and saying, we are going to go up and we're going to get the guy that we want. Dave, which philosophy do you seem to like? And this is just your own personal preference. So this is just like, how do you like the Steelers to approach?
Because now you're making me think I'm going to have to do something for Stat Geek now, of teams that trade away picks to gain better picks versus teams that gain more picks because they're trading back. How does that ultimately turn out to be successful with those teams, within the next 4 years?
Yeah.
I don't even know. That would probably take me forever to look up, and we'll see if I have enough time between now and next week to do that. But that would be a really good question. I'm more one of standing pat is a good way to go. I wasn't a big fan when the Steelers traded back. They didn't trade up to the 5th round. Let's see, that was 2021. They didn't trade up. They traded in. They did not give up a 2021 draft pick. They traded a 2022 draft pick to have an extra pick in 2021. I didn't know that was really what they needed to do in that case. But if they really like a guy, I love the whole notion that if they love a guy, go get him. If you love him that much, go get him. But what's even better is when you can get him without having to go. So you can regret all you want because they don't get the guy that they wanted because they didn't go get them. But man, it's really nice when they get him when they don't have to go.
Like a David DeCastro.
Exactly.
No one expected David DeCastro to be there. And next thing you know, he falls in their lap. You make the pick. Bryan, I don't know if you heard any of that conversation. Did you hear all that?
I'm saying that's a no.
Yes, I did. You started off with
He's back. Oh, he's gonna pull a Tony. Don't throw your laptop.
Oh, don't do it.
Don't throw your laptop.
Throw it. Don't throw it. Don't throw it. Don't throw it. Don't throw it.
I think
because people are looking out for you because even Afton had to say wanted to know if Bad switched to Tony's internet provider.
Yeah, he just has his laptop.
No. I know he's struggling with this right now, so I'll go ahead and say it for him. Because he was having a laptop screen issue, he had to send his computer away. And therefore, he's having to deal with an older computer until he gets his new one back. So I really feel bad for the guy. He was in here and great until he wasn't.
Yeah. There's a fine line, going back to the discussion.
Yeah, let's go back to the topic of the show.
There's a fine line between over aggressiveness. You think back, I have this horrible gut feeling when someone says like, "Oh, they trade into the top 10." I think of 2019. And say what you want, the Devin Bush experiment did not work out. Now, I don't think the Broncos really won because I don't think you've done this, Dave, didn't you? Like what they did with those picks. And I know Noah Fant was their first round pick.
Yep.
And
they traded away
one of
the
their
next one to Cincinnati, who got Drew Sample. I mean, I could tell you for sure that, when I really looked at the Minkah Fitzpatrick ones, man, did the Steelers make out like the Steelers did better on almost every pick with that whole thing. But with the Devin Bush, I look at what the Steelers could have done with those picks. Like if they would have waited, and even if they would have overdrafted Jermaine Pratt in the second round, because he ultimately went in the third, that still would have been a much better thing. But I wanted the Steelers to go get the guy they wanted. If they wanted him that bad and they believed he was the answer, go get him. Go get him. And it didn't work out. I really would love to see what would have happened if Devin Bush wouldn't have got hurt. I don't know if he would have been as good as we would have liked, but I think he would have been better than what he ended up being. I just think that was too much on his mind. I want the Steelers I want them to be decisive. I really do. Rather than be like, well, we'll see what happens. If there's a guy that they're convinced they could go. The reports last year was that they tried to trade up to get Kenny Pickett. They were going to trade with New Orleans. Wasn't that the report, Jeff?
Andrew Wilbur said Mike Tomlin hates Kenny Pickett. I don't believe you.
Yeah. So,
well, I want to ask you about this. Or, I don't want to stop your train of thought there. This is something I talk about on my Friday Let's Ride podcast, which you can hear tomorrow on the audio side only. Christopher 11 says your first round pick needs to be a day one starter. Day one starter, as people say all the time. Day one starter. What are your expectations, Dave? Just your expectations.
Yeah.
We heard Kevin Colbert. I loved his answer. Last year before the draft when he said rounds 1 through 3, we expect them to eventually be starters.
Yes.
For this team. Like I've never heard a GM be that specific, especially Colbert. I think it was because it was his last one. But when you think about expectations for a first round pick, Dave, what are they?
You want them to be able to take over as a starter as soon as possible. Does it have to be day one? It does not. It really doesn't. And I don't think the Steelers don't try not to put that pressure on their first round draft picks, but you want them to be the first player that's going to be available to be a starter. The earlier, the better. But at the same time, the best scenario is to have a situation where they're not forced into action. Now, there are certain positions that you would want them to start right away. For example, running back. I think that's a first round draft pick that if you don't start them right away, then it's not worth taking a running back in round 1 in the recent NFL. So that's one. If you're going to go out of your way, maybe even tight end. If you're going to draft a tight end that's that good to be a first round pick, they should probably be a starter. But I'm not going to put that pressure of saying you're a day one starter. That's you hope for the best, prepare for the worst. You want them to be a starter by mid-season, and hopefully they're ready sooner. And sometimes them being ready sooner can actually make for a very awkward situation. Just ask one Trent Jordan Watt and James Harrison.
Right. Yeah. Bryan, you've returned from the dead. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. I have no clue what's being talked about. That much of a delay.
Yes,
oh, this is killing me.
Yeah.
But I'm not angry, and I just apologize to you guys. Let's hope FedEx gets some HP. But no, I guess I started things back up again.
He's so bad. All right, we're just gonna say bye. All right, so Dave,
this is what happened to me with my computer whenever we did whenever in 2020 when the Steelers didn't have a first round draft pick. I was lagging so bad. I was just like, I just got to go.
Yeah, you just got to call it quits sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to wave the white flag.
So let's look back here, and this is obviously something you're very familiar with in terms of the overall Steelers draft history. So let's just look at first round picks to start. And the expectation of them being a day one starter.
Yeah.
Like day one starter. Last year,
I'm
Kenny
ready.
Pickett. No.
Nope.
No. Now, would you consider George Pickens, though?
See, that's a different position. Now, was George Pickens, quote unquote, starting? They were probably making sure they weren't putting in packages that had him out there very, very first thing, necessarily just because he didn't have to have the pressure of being the starter. If that makes any sense, I don't know that they did that or not, but if they did, it wouldn't shock me. But it depends on your position of whether or not it's a rotational piece. Quarterbacks all or nothing. Offensive line, all or nothing. Secondary, the main starters are pretty much all or nothing, but then now you've got so much sub package, you can work those guys in. Outside linebacker, for sure you work guys in. Defensive line. But it really all depends on the position. But Kenny Pickett was not expected to be the guy right away.
No. So let's go to 2021. Najee Harris. Yes.
Running back, you don't take a running back unless they're a day one starter.
The tough one is Pat Freiermuth. Was he, in your opinion, a day one starter?
He was not.
He
wasn't a day one.
Him?
It was Eric Ebron.
That's right. I forgot about Eric Ebron.
And then Freiermuth was pretty much taken over by the time Ebron got hurt. Out for the. Remember, Eric Ebron's last play as a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers when he broke. Yeah, he was a
rushing touchdown. There's a rushing touchdown.
A touchdown. No, I don't think that was his rushing touchdown. I think that one, because this one happened out on the corner. Okay. I remember it was close to the pylon that he hurt his ankle. But he did have a rushing touchdown in there, which was crazy. So yeah.
All right. Let's go back another one.
Because remember, 2021 was a strange year. That was the cap reduction.
Yeah. 2020, there's no first round pick. Chase Claypool, though.
It was at a position that you could rotate him in.
He was not day one. He played a lot, but he was not considered. He was not relied upon. I don't.
And same with Alex Highsmith. He's playing, as the next pick. He's playing a position where you can get him some snaps without having to ask him to do everything.
Right. Let's go back to 2019. Devin Bush. We talked about him.
You don't trade up to 10 unless you really want the guy to be the day one starter. But they had Mark Barron for a reason. Barron was ready to be the guy for them if Bush wasn't the guy. But there was a push for Bush.
Well, here's one in 2018. You talk about Terrell Edmonds.
He was
not supposed to be, and then Morgan Burnett simply just couldn't stay healthy, and he was thrust into the lineup. But he was not a day one slotted player.
No, he started week 2, and he played a lot in week 1 because Burnett tried to come back and wasn't ready.
Yeah, and then you go back to 2017. It's the last one we'll do, and that's obviously T.J. Watt.
Wasn't supposed to be.
No, he earned it, and
he was just too good to keep off the field.
Yeah, and then Juju Smith-Schuster had a heck of a rookie season that year as well. So yeah, that was a great draft class. Actually, I know you just did that
I
article.
just did that article.
But
ran
what a
yesterday.
great draft class. That was a fun one.
Even with Colin Holba.
That's what made it great, Dave. Come on. You don't talk about the Steelers draft without bringing up the 6th round pick from Louisville, Colin Holba, the legend, Colin Holba. So, yeah, some thoughts there about expectations for first round picks. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. On the audio side, you're going to hear a word from our sponsors here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, Steeler fans, welcome back. Steelers preview, 1 week, Steelers NFL draft. We're excited. We're going to have a lot of stuff for you here on the Steel Curtain Network, and we'll probably outline all of that next week in terms of what shows are going to be moving, what shows are going to be added. We're going to have stuff on the audio side that's only on the audio side, like we do every day, like breaking news podcasts, things of that nature. So make sure you are staying tuned to all things Steel Curtain Network. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and obviously follow us right here on YouTube. If you're watching us live on this YouTube channel, all you have to do everywhere, just search Steel Curtain Network and you will find us. And while you're doing it, why don't you go ahead and give us a follow on Fan First Sports Network as well. That's at Fans First SN and at FFSN_NFL. Those are scrolling across your screen right now if you're watching us live in one of those platforms. So Bryan Davis has returned from the bathroom. He is ready to go. Bryan, when you think about next Thursday, positionally, predict where are the Steelers going to go with their first round pick?
Well, actually, what I'm thinking, and I hope you're hearing me, and if you're not, you're going to start to laugh right now, and then I'll probably have to go away for good for this show and bribe my son to let me use his MacBook. But with that being said, so you're not laughing, so that means that I'm probably really late on this. But I really think what they're going to go ahead and do is, as you're laughing, so I'm just going to cut that off and I'll figure this out.
He was fine.
He could have answered it.
Yeah,
he could have answered. We were letting him go. Oh, well.
You were laughing.
Now
I didn't know.
Back. Yeah. Well, we're laughing just because you're just answering the question.
You were on the show, but let me. I think they're going to OT. I want them to go cornerback. I think they're going OT.
All right, Dave. What about you? If you had to just pick a position that you think they'll target in the first round.
I think it's going to be cornerback because I think it's between the cornerbacks and tackles is the most likely. And you have to judge it based on how you think the draft will fall. Because if the tackles are gone, you're going cornerback. If the cornerbacks are gone, but the tackles aren't, you're probably going there. If they're both gone, then you don't know what they're doing. They go into the next level or they go in a different position. I want to see quarterbacks and wide receivers flying off the board. That's what I want to see. So the Steelers have more options.
Wide receiver. I mean, when you think about it, Smith Najigba is one of those guys that everyone's thinking is going to go early. Zay Flowers has been tossed around. I don't see a lot of Jordan Addison, obviously. I don't see a lot of receivers going really early. Do you?
I don't, but I'd love to see it.
I would love it too.
It's good for the Steelers.
Shoot, get Hendon Hooker up in the top 15.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
I've been calling for a hooker for weeks now.
Yeah. Get Will Levis up there as well. Get all these guys up there. I'm fine with all of it. I'm going to go with cornerback. Mm-hmm. I just think that there's more of a pressing need for teams. The Steelers could be in this mix as well, but I think there's a more pressing need for offensive tackles amongst the NFL than there are for quality cornerbacks. So I think there's going to be the quarterbacks are going to go first. We assume, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson. I would say Jalen Carter is probably going to go somewhere in the top 10. And then you're looking at, okay, what position is going to be the next position? Will Anderson will go, but yes. What's the next position? I think that position is tackle. And that's when you see Skoronski and Johnson and Broderick Jones go. And then it comes down to where people weigh the cornerbacks. So I think that's going to happen. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
we're going
know.
to work through this some on Scobro Show on Tuesday. We're going to go through all my mock draft Monday articles to say who's more realistic and who's not. And then we're going to try to put them in order and kind of come up with a little bit of a big board. So make sure you join us for that one on Tuesday night because I kind of have like 3 tackles and 3 corners. And then where I would say I would go tackle over corner if it's one of the 3 and the other 3 corners are gone, but I wouldn't go to corner number 4. But I don't know if I'd go corner 4 tackle. There's a lot I have to go into. And then it's like, do you throw in an edge rusher that could be there ahead of some of these other guys? Because at the same time, you do just want a big quality player. I still think the Steelers would struggle to trade back and get good value because, we've seen the con man do his work. He is not going to get fleeced by anybody. He's not going to trade back just to trade back and not get a good haul. He'd rather pick at 17 than do that. And I'm just worried about the number of teams that are reportedly trying to trade back. So there's so much into this equation. That's what makes it so fun and so nervous. And that's why we're going to be sitting here glued to the television, trying to, watch and see what's going on.
I mean, I think about if everyone's going to talk about, I do think there's a position that the Steelers are looking at and that fans would be taken aback from in the 17th overall pick, the first round. But if we're all assuming that it's either tackle or cornerback, and let's say all the big 6, the 3 of each are gone. So Johnson, Skoronski, and Broderick Jones off the board. JPJ, Witherspoon, and Gonzalez off the board.
Yep.
Well, then most would say that like Darnell Wright is the next up.
Darnell Wright would be right there for me.
And most would say that who do you
Deontay
think?
Banks.
Deontay Banks from Maryland.
Some people like him better than Joey Porter, but Steelers fans don't like Mike Tomlin drafting Maryland players. So they have a little bit of a bias there. Brian McFadden talked about that on the Steel City Insider podcast on the Steel Curtain Network. That was out Wednesday afternoon. If you did not check that podcast, go back and listen to it. It was great.
It was a good one. So go to our audio platform. Just type in Steel Curtain Network wherever you get your podcast, and you'll find it. The Steel City Insider is a great show. Go ahead, Dave.
I want to make an argument for Brian because he's not here. I want to argue Brian's idea of offensive tackle. Brian's idea of offensive tackle is this is a deeper cornerback class. So if you can get your tackle earlier, you'll have more options later at corner. That's a good way to think about it. But this is how crazy the NFL draft is, where you overanalyze. Because now I'm going to take that one step further and say, well, if a lot of teams are thinking that way and they're going to grab their tackles because there's more corners left, then maybe one of the top corners will be there if you have enough separation. This is the classic episode of Friends, which I know Jeff doesn't watch, where you want to say, but they don't know that we know that they know that we know. That's what we're doing with this. This is how we break down the draft when we get a week away.
Yeah.
We so overanalyze it, but that's because this is such a big, exciting thing. It's like Christmas. I love it.
Okay, so outside of the tackle talk and the cornerback talk, which has really been happening a lot across all Steelers podcast realms, if there's a position, I'm going to ask you what this position is for you that you want the Steelers to address early that not a lot of people are talking about. I'll tell you what mine is. It's center.
Okay.
I want the Steelers to get a center. I kind of told you this. I saw you in person this week.
Yes.
And I talked to you about how I want the Steelers to get drafted center. They don't need that center to play right away. And I'm not saying they take a center at 17. I would be okay with one of the second round picks being a center if it's the guy that you think could be your center for the next decade plus. And this is a decent center class. I mean, you think back to last year's Tyler Linderbaum, and that was really it. It was the year before that where Creed Humphreys was an option. Don't bring that up around some Steeler fans. But still, this is a decent class. And so I think that's a position that not a lot of people in amongst the Steelers podcast realm are really talking about a lot, but I hope they do draft a center. Is there a position like that for you, Dave?
Well, first of all, center is one of those positions. I'll come up with another one, but first I want to talk about center.
Sure.
That's one of those positions where if you think you've got a guy that can be the next guy, get him. Because the Steelers already learned that when you drafted a guy that you thought maybe could be the next guy, even as a third round pick, if you throw him out there right away when he's not ready, next thing you know, he's not even wearing a uniform the entire next season. So B, they're in a much better situation that they wouldn't have to force them into action. And what's really nice when you don't have to force someone into action, sometimes they step up. Once again, I'm going back to the Steel City Insider podcast that aired on Wednesday. Brian McFadden talking about how deep the Steelers were at cornerback when they drafted him. And yet he had to fight. He didn't even get a helmet to start off. And yet he's making key plays in what was arguably, they talked about it on the show, the biggest upset in Steelers history when they defeated the Colts in the playoffs on their way to the Super Bowl. That he made some, I mean, that was in some of the top plays that were outlined by the What Yin's talking about, 64 March Madness bracket. And he couldn't get on the field right away. It's okay if that's the case with someone who's with center. If the guy you like is there when you have a pick and you feel that you can make that pick, do it. But center is not something they need to force at all this year. And when I've run some mock draft, Mason Cole has this year, next year left to answer Ashley's question. Yeah. So he was a 3-year deal. I'm fairly certain. I'm going to double check that while we're talking here.
Well, if you want to do that, I want to answer a question in the live chat about
okay, go ahead, because I still haven't given my other position yet. We'll come back.
Yeah. So like Mark Tobin, he said that's such a waste to draft a center when you have Cole. Nope. I don't think it's a waste. People forget, yes, it would be great to have a player come in and start right away and be that rock or that anchor for the next 10 years. I also have no problem with a player coming in, being a backup for a year, and then saying, okay, he's ready. I just said this in case you missed it. I don't want them to take a center first overall, their first overall draft pick. I don't want that. I'm looking for something that is, a long-term thing. And you think about some of the centers, Marquise Pouncey was not normal. I mean, that dude came in, he was ready. Maybe that is the case. I don't know. But Dave, go ahead. What did you find out?
Oh, yeah, he does have 2 years left. I was fairly certain, but that both him and James Daniels and Chukwuekorf were all signed 3-year deals. I knew for sure Daniels and Okorafor because they were the right side, but I thought the entire from center out of what played there for the Steelers last year was part of that. So a position for me that I think that the Steelers, there's just so many positions that are there. I'm going to go tight end. That I think the Steelers could throw another tight end in there.
Very good class this year.
Yeah. So whether it's early, late, or whatever, wouldn't matter. But I'm just saying they could. But if they don't, trust me, I'm not going to be worried about it.
Tight end.
Can I
go ahead?
I was going to turn this question around on you and ask you from the other end. What position that everyone believes the Steelers are going to take, do you think they might not take it all in the draft?
Oh, I knew that one right off the bat. Offensive tackle.
Same here. People were soaking. I'm like, the Steelers, the chance to take the offensive tackle, blah, blah, blah. I still would not be shocked if they don't take one.
Mike Tomlin said, when he said at the owners' meetings that he was, what did he say, happy but not comfortable or something. I don't seek comfort. I don't remember if that was the exact quote that he gave at the owners' meetings, the league meetings. I was like, man, he's okay with Chooks and Dan Moore. He really is. And so that the Steelers don't go for a tackle early in the draft, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
A lot of people would be. But
you heard my rant several weeks ago on the Stat Geek about how I feel that people aren't judging Dan Moore like the typical Steelers lineman, because usually third-year linemen for the Steelers are just now looking to be full season starters.
Yeah.
I mean, especially ones that weren't drafted the first or second round. Marquise Pouncey is the only person to kind of compare him to. So some people are like, well, he is who he is. That's not how it is with offensive linemen. Oh, he's got enough experience to be who he is. No. Just because he's played a lot of snaps doesn't mean that he is who he is. I mean, I'll go back to my shot putting days. Oh, I threw shot put for 2 years. It didn't matter if I was throwing, shot put, 8 times a practice or 80 times a practice. What really mattered more was that I had done it for 2 years. So it's good that he has that experience, but that doesn't mean that he can't stop growing and keep getting better. So but I've also said I am fine with the Steelers upgrading. It's nice, But at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked if they don't.
You know, the funny thing is about the offensive line, and this is something that if you look at it and with a little different lens, and the moves that Omar Khan and Andy Weedle, the front office, have made this offseason, I think about Ken almost said Kendrick Green, Kevin Dotson. And we all know the dreaded P word that I hate, potential, that resides within Kevin Dotson. However, it almost seemed as if Omar Khan was like, I'm not waiting for this potential to come. And I know you have 1 year left. They could have run it back with the offensive line and said, I think this is a pretty good group. Let's hope for the best. We'll add some depth. You know, we'll get a Trent Scott type player late in free agency before camp and hope they can be a stopgap if necessary. No, they didn't. They said, we're not happy. We're making moves. And Nate Herbig comes in and Isaac Seumalo comes in. And now all of a sudden you're like, whoa, this is a little bit different. I could see them also saying with offensive tackle, look, Dan Moore, like you're okay right now. We're not about to just sit here and wait and see if you're going to pan out. Like we're going to go out and get a guy because we think he's that guy and you might not be that guy ever. So it's a different approach. It's a different philosophy. We'll have to see what happens, but it's going to be interesting. Go ahead, Dave.
No, I'm
just
going to add to the, if the Steelers, if all the tackles are gone, even let's say the fourth best, I'm sorry, this is an aside. I hate talking about positional rankings because some people get so caught up on, wouldn't you rather have the second best corner than the fifth best tackle? You know what? I don't care if he's the second best corner. It's all based on the class that he's in, or if he's the fifth best tackle. If it's because he's in a really stacked class of tackles, that doesn't matter. But I do talk about where they are specifically for this year. There might be, this year we've talked about the big three. Sometimes there's a big five. Sometimes there's a big one. It changes year to year. But I don't want the Steelers to take a tackle that really shouldn't be taken at 17 just because all the other ones are gone and they feel like tackle is that big of a need. I don't think it's that big of a need. I think it's something that they could still continue to work their own players. Because another thing that's going to, would Steelers fans be frustrated the Steelers don't draft a tackle and draft one high? Probably. But you know what else would be frustrating? If they draft a tackle at number 17 or even more, move up for them, and they can't break into the starting lineup because the other two tackles would refuse to give up their jobs.
Yeah. And people talk about like second round tackles, and it just reeks of bad memories of Mike Adams from Ohio State, who I still remember him getting caught smoking weed and well, he begged the Steelers, begged them at the combine, please put me back on your board. Sometimes players just ruin stuff, Yeah. Devin Bush has ruined trade ups for me. I don't want it. I don't want anything to do with it. Just stay put because it gives me a bad feeling.
And I would have had great trivia, except you threw that question to me that someone asked you on Twitter, and then I answered it. So I know you know the answer.
What question?
It was actually about teams that trade up or that trade down out of 32. I'm like, there's just as many teams that recently that have traded up from 32 back into the first round as ones that have traded back with that pick as well. So that was one thing. And the other thing, do you realize that the Steelers did not trade up in the NFL draft in the common era, meaning I think it's Super Bowl era, not even the merger era. I keep saying area, until Kevin Colbert. They did not trade up in the draft in the first round.
Yeah.
Until Kevin Colbert. Since 2000.
Was Colbert's first trade up Troy?
No, wasn't it? Didn't they trade for Plaxico?
I don't know.
Or was it Santonio? Well, I can't remember which one.
Shaking his head now. He's sitting in the studio. He's shaking his head.
Yeah. So
Troy was the first.
Okay. Because I always mix up Plexico Burns and Santonio Holmes.
Santonio Holmes, yeah.
I mix them up. Santonio Holmes is who they traded up for, right? And that would have been after Troy.
They did trade up for Santonio Holmes.
Yes.
And that was after Troy.
Yeah. Yes. So it would have been Troy, Holmes, and Bush. I think it's just those three.
Yeah, did they trade? Yeah, I mean, they traded up for other players. Like they traded up for Mason Rudolph.
Yes, but I'm saying first round trade.
But yeah, first round, yeah. And they only traded back
Casey, and that was
Casey
brilliant.
Hampton,
That was brilliant
2001.
because they still got the guy I think they would have drafted in that spot.
In which case it was awesome that
Yeah.
Kevin Colbert last year explained their entire thought process if they even entertain trading backwards. So if they have an offer to trade back 4 spots, they have to have 4 players still available that they would love to have with that pick. And if they don't take the trade.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really fascinating.
Kevin Colbert's not here anymore.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So now we don't know.
You talk about intrigue.
How do I do
stats? Like to the max. What's that?
How do I do stats and predictions when Omar Khan, you don't know if he's going to act like the Steelers front office always has or just do something completely different. It's very exciting. It makes it tough for me when I do salary cap updates because
your world's upside down because you have no idea how they're going to do it.
He doesn't structure it exactly like he had always structured it under Colbert, where the very first year it's the minimum no matter what. They didn't do that with Minka Fitzpatrick last year. They gave him a little bit more than the minimum. Gave him the same amount year one, but didn't put as much in the signing bonus as they could have. So maybe he just wants to keep the rest of us to think that we know salary cap stuff on our toes.
All right, very good. Do you have trivia, Dave?
I do have trivia. Trivia.
I'm by myself. This is
I know. So Brian might, maybe he'll jump back in and do this. The Steelers are in a very unusual place this year. And that is they have a draft pick. They are scheduled. I got to say scheduled because we know anything could happen. They are scheduled to have a draft pick in the 30s. How many times since the merger, just throwing out a number, have the Steelers had a draft pick in the 30s? So think about that. When did the NFL even get to 30 teams? So before that, to be in the 30s, you had to be in the second round. There was no end of the first round. So I'm not talking just second round. I'm just talking a draft pick at all in the 30s.
1995 is when they went to the 30s.
Yes. I threw that question out there, and I'm glad you stepped in to answer it. So if you kind of think back of stuff before 95 and after, if you just have a number to throw out there, Jeff's trying to count up some of them, aren't you?
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with.
Is it how many times?
How many players have they selected in the 30s where, pick 30 to 39 since 1970?
I'm going to say is a lower number. I'm just going to go with 12.
And Brian's going to chime in.
I'm going to say 5.
All right. 5. Well, they've got 2 on the team still right now.
I know Cam
and TJ.
Yeah.
TJ was 30. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the answer, you're right. It's pretty low, but not quite that low. The answer is 16.
I win.
16 times they have drafted.
Price is Right rules.
Yep. 5 times those picks have been first round picks, which therefore makes it 11 times they have been second round picks. The 5 first round picks in the 30s. Do you remember who they are? We just named 2 of them. TJ and Cam. Another one should be obvious.
Ziggy
Hood. Yep. In 2009 after winning the Super Bowl.
What a horrible pick.
Okay. So 2005, first round pick in the 30s.
Heath
Miller was number 30. And they also had number 30 pick in 2002 in the first round.
2002 wasn't Plexico, was it?
No, that was Kendall Simmons.
Oh.
Yep. Kendall Simmons, 30th overall in 2002.
Out of Florida, right?
Auburn.
I knew it was an SEC school.
But what's also
Auburn.
crazy, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. That's funny.
Down there.
Seattle has 2 losses. Hey, Jeff, I think you could get this question.
No, so it's a stupid one. Go for it.
No, because I just think you do. When you talk about second round draft picks that were picked in the 30s, the 2 most recent were because the Steelers traded up for them. Do you remember them? When the Steelers traded up in the second round into the 30s to draft someone. I know you've got to at least get one of them.
My brain is fried.
Because, you haven't had that many jerseys in your lifetime.
Kendrell Bell?
Kendrell Bell was in 2001.
Okay.
And then in 2004, they traded up for Ricardo Coakley.
Brian McFadden just talked about
Yes, he did. That's why I
He
thought you
just
might
talked
get that
about
one.
that.
Yeah. So the other second round picks that the Steelers had in the 30s were Coakley, Marvell Smith, Bell, Marvell Smith, Levon Kirkland, Carnell Lake. That was in 89, 87. Delton Hall, 86, Gerald Williams, 80, Bob Coors. That, you're getting back to old stuff. You don't care. 76, Ray Pinney, 72, Gordon Gray. Is it Gravel or Gravel? I'm not sure. And the greatest player in franchise history, sorry, TJ Watt, to be drafted in the 30s in 1971.
Dick Shiner.
Come on, Jeff. This is your guy. You did a whole, I was going to say you did a whole let's ride on him.
If you're talking about an old player, I don't even listen to the stuff you're saying. I'm going to say Dick Shiner. Yeah. And I don't even know if he was drafted by Pittsburgh. I don't think he was.
Yeah.
Dick Shiner. Yeah. Buzz Nutter. Those are my answers.
That's your answers. That's your go-to.
Brian, in 10 seconds, do you have trivia?
I think we should just ask Brian for his final thoughts. Yeah. we should just get his final thoughts.
Hey, let's do a new segment. Let's start off a new segment here. Random Steeler. Name a random. Think of a random Steeler that comes to your mind. I'm going to go first. Najee Davenport. Don't ask me why. I was thinking about Najee Davenport the other day. Dave, name a random Steeler.
Random Steeler. I'm trying to think about how far back I want to go. Random Steeler. Let's go Robin Cole.
Ooh. What about you, Brian?
Leathon Flowers.
Oh,
there you go.
Very nice. Okay. Dave, go ahead. Final thoughts.
Oh, I have to go first? Okay, I'll go. That way Brian can get his thoughts together. And I'll send him a signal and maybe he'll start a little bit sooner. But my final thoughts were bottom line is it's 1 week away. And to know that at this time, the pick still won't have been made, but we'd be getting really close at this time 1 week from now. And the anticipation, we will know people that are gone. We'll be talking about, oh my goodness, this person's still left. It is just so much fun to know which player is going to be the next member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Enjoy it. Don't put so much investment in it into being right or the Steelers taking your guy. So you can really just enjoy the process and know that you're looking at a moment that in years to come, you're going to be looking back and say, and seeing a replay of it, say, I remember when that happened. I remember exactly what I was doing when that pick was made. I still do it all the way back to 2004. I still remember. I mean, my goodness, I even remember when the Steelers selected Terrell Edmunds. I was driving home from the premiere of Avengers Infinity Wars, watching it on my phone whenever he was drafted. So I remember it. So you're going to remember where you were in those moments when the Steelers draft these players. So just sit back and enjoy it and don't put too much stock in. They took my guy or I knew this is what they were going to do. Rather than be right, just enjoy it.
Brian, final thoughts.
I have never been when Steelers did not pick Darqueze Dennard. I just saw the signal, but I had a conniption. I didn't want Ryan Shazier, and now so with that, just enjoy this process, like Dave said. And if you are if you're the owner of your house and you have some money underneath your couch cushions and you want to send it to FSSN and Steel Curtain Network for me to get a new laptop switch, I'll take it.
Is that an actual mailing address? FS.
That's not even the right company.
I'm having a night, guys. I'm going to be apologizing to you.
He's not apologizing for nothing.
No, Daddy. All right. Dave, why don't you send us out? This has been a good show.
Hey.
We'll see you next week.
Steel Curtain Network. Get it.
Everybody else gets a little tight.